Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to another edition of the Superman and Lois Season 4 review series. And today I am going to be talking about episode 6, When the Lights Come On, which I have just finished watching. And this episode was absolutely brutal and epic. This gave us something that we have been wanting to see for a really long time, and for die-hard Superman fans out there like myself who have been waiting for this moment, we not only got it, but it delivered in spades, and it was amazing. And it was something that I wasn't really expecting this soon. I thought maybe we would have got something like this maybe the second to last episode of season 4, but to get it halfway into the final season was definitely welcomed, and it delivered. And yes, you know what I'm talking about. Clark Kent versus Lex Luthor. One on one, no powers, no technology involved, man on man. What a punch up. That's all I've got to say. What a epic punch up this was. And I absolutely loved it. And the fight that Clark and Lex had reminded me of a comic book, I think from the 50s or maybe the early 60s, somewhere around that time, where Lex Luthor just beat the tar out of Superman and there was no powers involved. Or I think it was something like that, but it was definitely from a comic book I remember from many years ago. So to actually see the show pay homage to this classic comic book was amazing. And that's what I love about this show. They aren't afraid to go different directions, pay homage to classic comic books, but put their own unique spin on it. I love it. And what they did for this episode with Clark and Lex was very well done. And I have to say, very well executed as well. I don't think we've ever had a scene quite like this. I know they did something similar to this in Smallville, but not to this degree. This was very, very well done. And this was something that, as a Superman fan, I was really hoping to see one day. Didn't think we would get it in this show, but I'm really glad we did. That's all I've got to say. And you knew this was coming. You knew this was building up to this big fight, because now that Superman is back from the dead, Lex Luthor knows about it, and obviously, as we saw previously in episode 5, we saw Superman and Lex talking to each other, and Superman pretty much telling Lex, stay away from my family, you have to let this go. And Lex, of course, being Lex, he's not going to let this go. So you could feel the tension building, and you knew this was coming. You knew there was going to be some sort of confrontation. I didn't really think it was going to be physical like this, but I'm really glad we got it. It was amazing. So, what we saw in episode 6, this pretty much picks up where we left off from the end of episode 5, where Lex's daughter pretty much told Lex to stay out of her life, and this pretty much sent Lex into a flying rage. And we pretty much saw in this episode at the beginning Lex taking all of the photographs of his daughter, all the newspaper clippings, all the different areas and all the different locations that his daughter's been staying or living at. He just pretty much set the whole thing on fire. And I thought to myself, okay, we're getting off to a very dark start. Lex is kicking everything around, he's punching walls, he's a bloody mess. He's angry. This isn't the goofy Lex Luthor, who constantly preaches about I'm the greatest criminal mastermind of all time, or the Smallville Lex Luthor, which I absolutely adore, saying I'm the villain of the story. No, this is an angry Lex Luthor looking for blood and ready to rip someone's head off. And I've said it from the beginning, and I still stand by it. I'm not the biggest fan of Lex Luthor. I've never ever bought into the idea of a human giving an alien so much trouble. But when Lex Luthor is written well, and when he's cast with the right actor, Lex Luthor can be the biggest badass on the planet. And what we got here with Superman and Lois, with Lex Luthor, he's not a badass, he's a monster. He's an absolute monster, and he's looking to knock someone out in the worst way. So we see throughout this episode, Lex is more or less trying to build Luthor Corp in Smallville, and not all of the residents are keen on the idea. And we also see his assistant, Amanda, who I'm kind of guessing is his Mercy Graves, so to speak, or at least someone close to that sort of version of that character. We pretty much see his assistant's loyalty really tested, and he's pretty much on a mission to establish himself as the head honcho of Smallville. No one can touch this guy, and he's pretty much not even saying, look, I want to buy this place. He said, no, I'm buying this place, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. And Lana Lang, of course, is the mayor, and Lex Luthor pretty much intimidated her. It's kind of funny because I always remember in other Superman media, Lex Luthor and Lana Lang at one point dated. Yeah, just leave that in your head for a few minutes to digest. And to see the shoes completely swap, it's quite interesting. So Lex is pretty much intimidating Lana. Lana doesn't back down. She said, no, the answer is still the same. Get out. Brilliant. And another thing as well that I noticed in this episode, lots of the residents of Smallville are catching on and figuring out that Clark Kent is Superman. Now, I can kind of see where they're heading for. I think how this show is going to end. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. It could go a completely different way. I think he will completely go public as Superman and announce himself as Clark Kent to the entire world. I think that's kind of how it's going to end, and he'll fully retire with Lois and Jonathan and Jordan. They will become the new protectors for Smallville and, more importantly, the world. I could be wrong, as I said. This could go a completely different way, but we'll see, really. But the more people are figuring out that Clark is Superman, the more I'm convinced that I think this is where we're heading in terms of how the show is going to end. And of course, Jonathan is basking in his new powers. He's been on a super saving mission, going around different countries and saving the world. Incredible stuff there. And we see Lois pretty much gives Amanda, Lex's assistant, food for thought. She pretty much says to her, what's going to happen when Lex has no further use for you, or you two don't see eye to eye anymore? What do you think's going to happen then? And this, of course, leads to Lana nearly getting murdered by Otis after he breaks into her house and tries to strangle her. And, Lana is thankfully safe, but you could see the look on Clark's face. And, Superman has always been this hopeful, optimistic character. He always wants to do the right thing. He'll do anything for his friends and loved ones. But I don't really like that Superman much. I do like a Superman who is the ultimate good guy, but I also like a mean streak in Superman. I like the Superman that they did in the DCAU, where he's the ultimate good guy. He's a great person to have on your team, but if you go on his bad side, oh boy, you'll regret it. And that's exactly the version we got here. We've seen little hints of it here and there throughout the show, but we finally got it here. We see Clark outside Luthor's hotel screaming, "Get out here now!" And he said, "This ends now." And Lex, of course, being Lex, saying, "I don't know what you're talking about." And Clark is pretty much saying, "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You threaten my friends, you threaten my family. This ends now." And that one line that really gave me chills when Clark said, "We are going to end you." And Lex flips the switch, all of the street lamps go red, and the whole Smallville is just bathed in this dark red light. And we see Clark throw his glasses on the floor, and we see these two enemies just beat the snot out of each other. And I loved it. And what I loved about this scene was it's all red. Clark's got no powers, and he's just going for it. And I think it's one of those moments, Clark has always been so cautious about his powers. He's always held back. So to have him with no powers, depowered, and he's just going for Lex. And I think you really need that kind of scene. Just Superman with no powers, just beating the crap out of Lex. And it did look like at one point Lex had the upper hand and Clark got the better of it. Wow. It was almost like they were in hell. This dark red lights. Clark's bloody, Lex is bloody. Clark smashes Lex's head through the car window. It was just fantastic. I really loved it. And Superman's not really known as a fighter because he's got powers. But to see him in a knockdown fist fight with his greatest enemy doesn't get any better than that. And for me, this was probably one of the best scenes of the entire show. It's definitely up there with the Doomsday fights. Of course, completely different, but wow, this was amazing. And Lex at the end, even after he's completely destroyed, still laughs and taunts Clark in his face. He says, "Now everyone can see you for what you really are." And wow, and just Clark just throws Lex on the floor and just slowly walks away as it's raining. What a badass moment. And having Clark's family watching him beat the crap out of Lex, I thought that was excellent. This is justice for them. I loved it. And even though Clark did feel a little bit bad after stooping to Lex's level, everyone just cheered him and said, "No, you did exactly what had to be done. Lex got exactly what he deserved." And the way that fight ended with Clark yelling at Lex and telling him, "Don't come back. I never want to see you here again." I loved it. And then the ending, just when this episode couldn't get any more epic, we see Amanda comes back in and pretty much, makes it clear that I'm loyal to you, Lex, and you're doing it all wrong. And I love this line at the end. "You're going to need a killer suit. You know what's coming. The war suit." That's right. Lex's war suit is coming to Superman and Lois. And we're still getting references about Milton Fine. At some point, we are going to see Milton Fine. Anybody who knows that name, Milton Fine is really Brainiac. It's all coming. When? I don't know. But before this season is finished, we're going to get all of this and more. But this episode, from start to finish, was fantastic. The fight between Clark and Lex was well executed. And as I said, great punch up. I do like a good punch up, especially with two guys like this. It's just excellent stuff. I really enjoyed this episode a lot. This was so good. So anyway, that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What did you guys think of episode 6? Did you enjoy it? What was your thoughts on Clark and Lex's fight in the red lights in the street? Did you enjoy it? What about this killer suit that Amanda was referring to? Is it the war suit? Are we going to get it in Superman and Lois? And also, where does Lex go from here after being humiliated by Clark, a depowered Clark? What plans does he have next? And what about Milton Fine? When do you think we will see him? What kind of role is he going to play? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Superman and Lois Season 4 review series, where I am going to be talking about Episode 7, which I am really looking forward to seeing, especially with the way this episode ended. It's going to be epic. Can't wait. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And once again, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for listening.